Guten Tag. Hey everyone, in this video I'll tell you all about the top 10 German novels of all time. Not only that, you will also get to know the top 10 German novelists. The German culture is more associated with pragmatic science and mathematics. Therefore, the art and humanities, the byproducts are more in terms of music, philosophy, and psychoanalysis. Music is very mathematical. Philosophy and psychoanalysis deploy scientific methods. So it's not a coincidence that the greatest composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach, the greatest philosophers like Kant, Hegel, Marx, Nietzsche, Heidegger, and two great psychoanalysts, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, are all product of German culture that promotes pragmatism over idealism. It's also not coincidence that Johannes Gutenberg inventing the printing press in the German city of Mainz in 15th century that revolutionized literature as a whole. But when it comes to literature, Germany has plenty of it, so let's get right into it. These 10 novels by 10 different authors will give you a solid introduction to German literature. I'll start with the oldest and end with the latest, so that you can learn the German literary history as well. Rest assured, Hitler's Mein Kampf is not on the list. The Sorrows of Young Werther by Johann Goethe. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, born in 1749 and died in 1832, is the father of German literature, a poet, a playwright, also a scientist and an intellectual. The Sorrow of Young Werther was his first novel when he was only 24 years old, and his most well-known too, which he based on his own personal experience of unfulfilled love. Through a series of letters to his friend Werther, a young artist tells about his romance with Charlotte, a country girl engaged to another man. An intense emotional torture of a doomed love from the very start, the rejection and the seeing her marrying another man. The love triangle means one of them has to lose. Evolution cannot accommodate everyone, which means some people simply cannot procreate. In this case, it's the tragic end for the young artist. He commits suicide with a pistol that was sent by his lover Charlotte. Goethe himself became a celebrity after the publication of this novel. Even Napoleon loved it. Also, the novel's tragic end caused Werther fever among young Europeans, with some copycat suicides. It also intensified the German Romantic movement, which spread throughout Europe. You can even see its impact on great Russian writers like Pushkin and Lermontov, both dying in romantic duels. The German Sturm und Drang movement in art, music, and literature means pouring out emotions that is characterized by individual freedom. Fun fact, Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher of suffering and misery, was a close friend of Goethe. My next pick is a really short novella, not very well known. The Marquess of O by Heinrich von Kleist. Heinrich von Kleist was a novelist, a poet, and a playwright from Frankfurt and lived around the same time as Goethe. His short novella, The Marquess of O, is set during the Napoleonic Wars in Italy, in which a woman of high rank is about to be raped by soldiers, but at the very last minute saved by a Russian commander. During this ordeal, she is unconscious, and this proves very vital later because she gets pregnant. So the plot centers on who is the father. Is it one of the soldiers or the commander, or could it be a servant? She is thrown out of her family for betraying herself so carelessly, but later proven innocent. The commander turns out to be a good man who marries her, and they live happily ever after. This novella has one of the best first line ever. Quote, "In M, an important town in northern Italy, the widowed Marquess of O, a lady of unblemished reputation and a mother of several well-brought-up children, inserted the following announcement in the newspaper that she had, without knowledge of the cause, come to find herself in a certain situation, that she would like the father of the child she was expecting to disclose his identity to her, that she was resolved, out of consideration to her family, to marry him." It's a great novel of intrigue and mystery, but also short and fun to read. Now we enter the 20th century Prague. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. I've made a whole video about Franz Kafka in which I talk about his life, then summarize all his novels and give 10 lessons based on his writing, philosophy, and life. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you watch it, as I spent weeks on that video. Okay, The Metamorphosis is one of the greatest German novels, or novella, or a short story. It's everything. What is it about? Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning to find himself turned into an insect or vermin. He cannot go to work and cannot communicate with his family. This paralysis is like a nightmare in which he finds himself completely isolated, useless, and unwanted. So what does he do? Metaphorically speaking, he takes matters in his own hands. He has no hands, but legs. The novella is about how society or family treats a man who cannot provide for his family anymore. It's also about human alienation in modern age, when you are no longer connected with your work or your family or society other than through your productivity. Okay, from a dark room in Prague to a hospital in the Swiss mountains. The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. If Goethe is the grandpa of German literature, Thomas Mann is the father. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1929. I made a separate video about this masterpiece, The Magic Mountain, so you can watch it here. What is it about? It's a novel of illness, physical illness juxtaposed with historical or societal illness. Europe was experiencing a kind of madness during that time, the first half of the 20th century. Wars, industrialization, and colonial expansion. At the heart of The Magic Mountain is the battle between three different philosophies. On the one hand, we have humanism, which promotes individual freedom and rationality and wants to change the world for the rational individuals. While on the other hand, we have socialism that promotes economic equality and wants to get rid of classes. Somewhere in the middle, we have romanticism, which promotes the enjoyment of life and beauty and doesn't want to change a thing. The novel is much more than that, so please watch my video to learn 10 lessons from the novel. My next pick deals with the madness of war. All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque. This is one of the most successful German novels of all time, sold more than 20 million copies around the world. What is it about? Well, as the title suggests, it's about war. Don't mention the war. During World War I, one soldier's alienation from civilian life makes him to question the purpose of war by telling how futile it is. For example, in the battle, every day the soldiers advance a few meters, and then the next day they lose a few meters in territory. Basically, it's telling us that there are no winners in wars, but the only loss of lives. Soldiers become war machines. Humanity slowly dies out of them. When peace arrives, it's too late for the soldiers. Why? Some sacrifice their lives for nothing. Those who survive the war become so alienated that cannot adapt to civilian life. Becoming a soldier is a psychological and emotional shift. Returning to civilian life is their biggest challenge. The saying that war changes you is no understatement here. I think this novel should be read by those who enlist themselves to be soldiers. Soldiers are recruited often by lofty promises that they never tell them what it's like to come back. No wonder suicide is high among young soldiers. It's a fantastic novel. From the futility of war to lower depth of society. Berlin Alexanderplatz by Alfred Doblin. Doblin was a novelist and a doctor. Berlin Alexanderplatz is his most well-known novel. It is set in the working-class neighborhood of Berlin called Alexanderplatz in the 1920s. It's written in multiple points of views, using multiple sources like newspaper articles, songs, speeches, books, sound effects, and so forth. What is it about? When Franz Biberkopf was released from prison after serving jail for murder, he returns to his grim underworld of crime and poverty. He has one person he feels very close, his girlfriend, who is also a prostitute. But when she is murdered by one of Franz's own friends, he questions how much his life has sunk so low. How can he get out of this miserable world? There's hope, there's happiness, but nothing lasts forever. A victim of circumstances, his friendship with some really bad people drags him deeper into crime and misery. The novel depicts how life was in the poor underworld of Berlin during the tumultuous years between the two great wars before Hitler came to power. In a way, Franz's life mirrors that of Germany's circumstance at the time. Defeated in World War I, heavily ostracized by other countries and made to pay a huge amount of compensation. So Germany was so cornered that when Hitler offered a mad solution, everyone bought it. In desperate times, people take desperate decisions with terrible consequences. The greatest irony of this novel is that at the end, Franz becomes a prison guard. Germany turned into prison for millions of people in the decades that followed. My next choice takes us to Vienna and the last days of Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Man Without Qualities by Robert Musil. Robert Musil was an Austrian novelist whose novel The Man Without Quality is considered a masterpiece of German literature. I have discussed this in a separate video, so here I'll tell you this. It's about a man who feels alienated by society and feels resigned. He doesn't want to change the world like his peers. Instead, he sits back and watches as his country, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, is collapsing in front of his eyes. In Europe, modernity gave people the task of changing and molding the world the way they want it. But in this novel, The Man Without Qualities has no such intention. Instead, he looks and reflects at himself, not the outside world. He watches the outside world with a kind of derision and laughter and refuses to participate in it. Okay, from A Man Without Qualities to A Boy Who Refuses to Grow Up. Tin Drum by Günter Grass. Günter Grass was born in Gdansk in modern-day Poland, so he was in between the German and the Slavic cultures. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1999. He was part of the generation who wrote about how to come to terms with the Nazi past. His masterpiece is Tin Drum, about a Polish child, Oskar Matzerath, who narrates his own story while in mental hospital. At a young age, Oskar refuses to grow up to become a shopkeeper. He also has a superpower that when he screams, he can shatter glass. This reminded me of Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream, which shows how deep human angst at the madness of the world. Just remember that Oskar lived during the wars. His only prized possession is a tin drum, that he would do anything to keep it. He tells about his life and many of his love affairs before, during, and after the Second World War. During the war, he beats his drums to encourage soldiers to fight. And after the war, he becomes a famous musician. Despite his success, he cannot untangle himself from his guilty past. At the end, his guilt is too overwhelming to continue, so he implicates himself in a murder that would send him to prison for the rest of his life. This is in a way about the German guilt that affected the generation that came after the war, which Günter Grass was part of. The novel has so many elements: the madness of war, magic realism, fantasy, erotic sex, and philosophical questions. Oskar is an unreliable narrator who feels suspended between being a good and evil, a Jesus figure and a Satan figure, all in one. Fun fact, the film based on this novel won an Oscar in 1980. Nominative determinism. Okay, Oskar's past never left him, but in my next choice, it's the media that never leaves you alone. The Lost Honor of Katrina Blum by Heinrich Boll. Heinrich Boll won the Nobel Prize in 1972, and he was part of the generation of writers like Günter Grass who tried to openly question and understand the Nazi past. The Lost Honor of Katrina Blum is a very short novel about how the media has the power to manipulate, sensationalize, and manufacture stories. Journalists no longer report the news, but they make the news. It's a critique of Bild, a powerful tabloid newspaper in Germany, like The Sun in the UK. The novel is written in cold, objective language. It's about Katrina, whose only crime is that she spent a night with a man suspected of a murder. Her guilt is by association. Soon, journalists invade her house, vilifying her and inflaming the hatred towards her. She gets lots of hate letters. This is in 1970s, before social media, of course. The barrage of hatred causes Katrina's mother to die. Katrina has had enough and takes matters into her own hands. A revenge, not against the police or the public, but against the journalist. The saying that don't shoot the messenger here becomes you must shoot the messenger alone. The novel is also about how language is malleable and easily manipulated by those in power, i.e. journalists. I think the story resonates with many people because how powerless they are against big media companies and some shady tabloid journalists. My final pick is all about smell. Perfume by Patrick Suskind. Perfume is a German fantasy novel and a bestseller that sold more than 20 million copies around the world. It's about Grenelle, a French boy, later a man who has an exceptional sense of smell. So what does he do? He starts to produce perfume. In my video on Proust and 6 French stereotypes, I talked about how smell is an incredibly important part of French culture, from smelly cheese to wine to perfume industry, and even Proust's novel In Search of Lost Time, in which smell is fundamental in its theme and plot point. So this novel is written by a German, goes to town with the idea of smell being very French. Even the protagonist's name, Grenelle, means frog. Anyway, Grenelle, the protagonist, starts producing perfume, but he's so obsessed with the sense of smell that his obsession leads to commit all kinds of murders and cruelty. As times pass, he learns to manipulate people with new smells that he develops. But oddly enough, he himself has no smell of his own. He has no body odor. So he has to develop his own body odor. But the more he is able to manipulate smell, the more he hates people for being so easily fooled. He's repulsed by how stupid people are. In a way, he questions today's consumerism and advertising industry. They lie, we buy. In this novel, smell causes men to commit murder and do horrible things. I really enjoyed the novel, and I think the sense of smell is much more powerful than we think. So to sum up, German literature begins with Romanticism, then human alienation caused by modernity, then the Great Wars caused by nationalistic madness, and finally, escape from it all. If you want to win my copy of The Lost Honor of Katrina Blum, please write a comment down below. I'll choose a random comment and send the book to you for free.